Live from the sun-drenched cobblestones of the Eternal City, conversation crossing faith, culture, and current events. Civil discourse, civil debate, and the free exchange of ideas. This is Intersections with Bree Dail and Matt Dooley. Now your hosts, Bree and Matt.
Good morning from a chilly Rome. This is an all-new Intersections, crossing faith, culture, and current events with Bree Dail, and usually with Colonel Matt Dooley, but Matt had a little bit of a family emergency this weekend. His son did a little damage to his car. All things are well, but I've been saying to Matt Dooley over the weekend it's probably best for him not to come on the show today, because I think most of the show would have been me mocking Matt heavily on the fact that Army lost to Navy in football this weekend. Go Navy! But for those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Bree Dail. I am an internationally accredited journalist, including accreditation to the Holy See as the Rome correspondent for the Epoch Times. And you may also find me on Catholic World Report, Catholic news agencies, and all other types of outlets. I hold a BA in history from Christendom College, a master's degree in foreign policy and diplomacy from Norwich University, and I am a former naval officer. So, of course, I am very proud of our naval team taking back the win from Army. And today, because Matt is not here to join me, I am joined by my producer, Adrian. Good morning, Adrian.
Howdy, howdy. Praise be to God. It's good to be here.
So usually you break down the show into three sections and three themes: news impacting faith, connecting that news impacting culture, and finally news focused on current events and politics. But there's a little bit of a flex today because Matt's not here. We're not really going to get into too much politics, although I know people are really interested in seeing the strange or scary or creepy robot of the week. Unfortunately, we weren't gonna do that today because Matt's not here, but there's a lot of stories that happened over the week. So Adrian, first off, happy St. Lucy's Day.
Amen. Praise be to God. I for those who don't know, I am the producer for Bree's show, but I'm also the producer for the Catholic Drive Time show, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 a.m. Central Time. And Joe McLean is the host of that show, and his daughters, they made me St. Lucy cookies, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's super cute. And they have they look like little eyeballs, because St. Lucy getting her eyes gouged out. So I was like, oh my goodness, that's that's pretty cool.
It's so Catholic, so Catholic. I mean, really, people just don't understand that these traditions, especially in the United States, because a lot of when people moved, immigrants to the United States, a lot of those traditions kind of left, unless you lived in, say, New York or Boston, where you had these microcosms of culture, where those cultures, those fun Catholic little strange traditions maintained the traditions in the family. So what were the cookies made out of?
I have no idea. I haven't eaten it yet. It's too early in the morning in Houston to be eating cookies. But I will eat them later, and I'll let you know what they're made of.
It's too early in the morning for eating cookies, Adrian.
Yes. I am trying to get rid of this right here in the lower region.
Look, it's Christmas. That's what the first of the year is for,
Right, exactly. My New Year's resolution that nobody keeps.
Right, exactly. So hey, Adrian, I'm gonna ask you to pull up a video that happened yesterday of what happened so St. Lucy is a patron saint of Sweden. And there's a real beautiful Scandinavian tradition for St. Lucy's Day. A girl of a parish is chosen to be St. Lucy, and she wears a crown on her head. And so they sing this beautiful song, and we're going to listen to it in procession. And they did this yesterday also in Rome.
Sancta Lucia,
It's so beautiful. I think it's such a kind of haunting song, and here in Rome, they did this yesterday on the eve of St. Lucia's Day, and the ambassador from Stockholm was here. A youth choir was here, and they dressed up and they did tradition. These are things that I think, just with all the negative stories that happen in the press, this is the type of thing that I think we need to also promote. Don't you think? We were talking offhand about you taking a break from social media. I know there have been a lot of people who've tried to do so throughout Advent. And to be honest, I have also taken a step back from doing reporting and media work a bit, just because, it's Advent, and sometimes you need a break. You know, when you hear these stories, these happy stories, I mean, we have to hear about some of the breaking news that's affecting the church. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but Adrian, what are your thoughts on like balance, the need for balance, the need to show some of these beautiful traditions that we have?
Amen. I mean, I've never seen this before, and I was blown away by this. I'm very curious about the context of like what's going on, what's happening here. This is something like I guess this is just something that used to just be known in the bones of Catholics and has been lost. And I think that's something that we can start bringing back. I think that would be a beautiful thing. But definitely, I was at the point where I was getting so annoyed by everything going on, whether it was from infighting between Catholics on social media, whether it was the latest quote from Pope Francis this week, whether it was the Vatican setting up this weird statue in Rome, and everything in between, whether it was church politics, U.S. politics, national politics, metaverse, all these horrible things going on in the world, and I'm just like, I'm tired of it. And my friends and I'm in a group chat with a bunch of buddies I know in real life. They're like real friends. We're in a group chat together, and they're like, Adrian, you're being such a jerk. You need to stop being such a jerk. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm being very rude. I'm being very disrespectful. I need to. I'm not in a
Take a
good
break.
place. And so I was like, I need to get rid of all this stuff. So I deleted all my social media off my phone. I locked internet off my phone, so I can't even access the internet. I can't look at the news. I can't look at anything. And so I'm only using the internet and stuff because I have to for work. So I'm using it for all my computer at work, nowhere else. When I get home, my computer at home is not being used at all except for video editing, something I do on the side. And other than that, I am completely disconnected. And so I have no idea what's going on. And it's been so relieving. It's been so freeing. I've been like visually happier. I've been less connected, and I feel like this is something that we need to do. And I guess this is what happened in the past, where people weren't scandalized by everything because they just weren't paying attention. Because at the end of the day, who cares? It's kind of bad to say, but
it's there is activism, right? Then activism in the church, activism in the world right now, a lot of emotional manipulation. Whether it's on one side or the left or the right. One of the things I was saying earlier before we move on to other stories in the church is that we have to understand that if we believe in law, right? If we believe in truth, then we believe in law. If we believe in law, we believe in justice. If we believe in justice, we believe in ethics. And when you say the truth is subjective, all of that goes out the window. So when we hear like my truth is not your truth, and your truth can contradict my truth, then why would you abide at all by ethics? You wouldn't, right? Because my ethics are not your ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we see like emotional manipulation or propaganda coming from the side that claims that truth is objective, it's almost contradictory, right? Because then you're saying the ends justify the means, and that's not the case, So either truth is objective, and his name is Jesus, and we serve him, or it's completely subjective, and God is dead. And that's where I think a lot of the back and forth on social media is right now going on, because there is a fundamental disagreement on whether or not truth is objective. And if it isn't, then we have chaos, and we see a lot of chaos in a lot of the reactionaries that have taken to the streets. One of the things that we'll talk a little bit later on is what we've been seeing out of Chicago, out of some of the other big cities throughout the United States, with this like massive uprise of coordinated looting that has taken on this week, and the arguments for looting that people have taken to social media with. But to finish up some news this week from the Vatican. The Vatican has unveiled its Peruvian nativity scene. And I know, Adrian, you're going to jump on over and show the video that came out this week. Lots of video came out and showing this this unveiling. Personally, I actually am relieved. The statues look like human beings, and we have a condor in it, which is quite interesting. Kind of swooping in and taking a look at Our Lady and Saint Joseph. Lots of llamas and other happy Peruvian animals in this. Very colorful, but certainly not looking as we had it in the controversial nativity scene of last year, which kind of reminded me of Weeble people. What are your thoughts, Adrian? I know that you also have Hispanic roots. What do you think on what's being represented, here? It's very unique.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what I think about it. This is actually the second time I've seen it. I saw it right before the show, and I'm looking at it now, and I'm like, it's definitely better than last year. Last year was absolutely horrific. Like, by the literal definition of horrific, it was terrifying to look at, and it was. But this is definitely not terrifying to look at. It is kind of odd. I don't know. I think when we see
that condor, do you see it?
Yeah, I see the condor. And if you're watching online, you can see the condor right here in the video. But it's funny because I'm thinking about what's the difference between this and the apparitions of Our Lady and our Lord whenever they appear in the cultures in which they happen. And I think there's a difference here. I think the difference might be, and this is just me thinking out loud, I haven't developed these ideas yet, but the idea might be that, our Lord became incarnate in a real time, in a real place. And so when we depict those things that happened, they should be depicted in such a way that represent it. It's kind of like the scandal of the incarnation. Our Lord used bread and wine. He didn't use grape juice and rice cakes. So we have to use those things that he used. Whereas in the apparitions, our Lord is actually appearing now. It's not him back then. It's him now appearing in different places and coming to the people as the people. So Our Lady Guadalupe, whose feast day, we had a huge celebration at our church yesterday for the Feast of Our Lady Guadalupe. And that's Our Lady coming as a mestizo woman and looking at like the people that she appeared as. And that's special. But I think there's a difference here. For some reason, the nativity scene here, while definitely being better, it just rubs me the wrong way. It just feels off.
One of the things that I wonder is that, is this traditionally how the Peruvian nativity scenes look? Because if that's the case, then I can appreciate the fact that that was kind of brought by the Spanish to Peru, and then the culture was enculturated into the nativity scene as part of the mission, and that's always kind of how it's been. But I don't believe it is the case. I think they do have the traditional looking nativity scenes, which then begs the question, why the enculturation? And on the flip side, we're going to talk a little bit about a few more stories out of the Vatican, including what we're expecting this week in news. Cardinal Becci will be arriving at his hearing tomorrow. Stay tuned.
The 18th century skeptic philosopher David Hume argued the wise man should never believe in miracles because the evidence for what occurs over and over, the regular, always outweighs evidence for what does not, the rare. But is Hume right? Well, no, and here are some reasons why. First, it's not true evidence for uniform experience always outweighs evidence for what is rare. For example, have you experienced any Big Bangs lately? My guess is no. Does that mean we should reject the Big Bang? Of course not. Second, Hume's principle nullifies science itself. How could scientists ever reasonably use new findings to update their understanding of the universe if it's unreasonable to accept what contradicts our uniform experience? The answer is they couldn't. So are miracles in and of themselves off limits for the wise, as Hume puts it? Absolutely not. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
We all know children have a natural innocence and a sense of wonder. Yet our world is full of distractions that can pull families in the wrong direction. But with the help of God and a church family, your children can grow in the security of faith, hope, and love. Weekly Mass provides that critical faith foundation needed in life. So if your family hasn't been to Mass in a while, we'd like to invite you home. Discover more at CatholicsComeHome.org.
And welcome back to an all-new Intersections Crossing Faith, Culture, and Current Events with Bree Dail. I'm joined today by my producer, Adrian. And Adrian and I were discussing the Peruvian nativity scene in the last segment before we went to break, and I just wanted to kind of finish up on this because I think it's interesting to get the perspective, Adrian, that you have, being that you yourself have Hispanic roots. And we were discussing another big feast day, Our Lady of Guadalupe, which also was celebrated here in Rome. The Mexican expat community here sang to Our Lady in St. Peter's Square after the benediction, which was just beautiful. They had a mariachi band that was like the best mariachi band I think I've ever heard sing. The special Guadalupe song, the special song that you hear every year on Our Lady of Guadalupe. But, you know, I'm interested in getting your perspective. You know, is it too much to see, a Peruvian, like to show the culture of Peru enculturated into a nativity scene? As you said, Our Lady did appear in the garb and looking as part of the culture of the or the subculture rather in Mexico when she appeared to Juan Diego. What are your thoughts before we move on?
Yes, definitely. I think a number of things is at play here, and my initial reaction is immediate skepticism, and especially having things happen in localities is different from things happening in Rome, because Rome is the center of the church. And when I look to Rome, I imagine something that, yes, of course, the Italians have their own culture and their own ideas and their own devotions, but at the same time, Rome itself is the center of the Catholic Church. And there we look to Rome and we see the universality, and to see something so independent, something so detailed and narrow, it kind of limits the church. It's kind of like whenever I go to Mass, and like whenever I go to, I have very good friends with the Vietnamese sisters in Houston, and so I go to Mass there occasionally with them, and they have Mass in Vietnamese, and I'm like, okay, well that's good for them, but for someone visiting, it's very disorienting. It feels like I'm not part of their community. It's a different community, and that's how I feel looking at it, because I'm not Peruvian. I'm Hispanic, but I'm of my family's descendant from Mexico. I mean, my parents are from America, but we're from Mexico initially, and that's Peruvian culture is not my culture, and it kind of really limits all the way to just one people. And even in there, I'm sure that among the Peruvian people, that doesn't represent all Peruvian people. It's probably a subset of Peruvian people. So I find it to be limiting the universality of the church.
Yeah, and I think that the intent was never to do that. Instead, the intent was to show the universality and the differences within the different cultures of Catholicism. But you make a really excellent point, and is actually one of the things that I personally have experienced when I deployed. Trying to get to a Catholic Mass, finally being able to, when we would pull into port, and not, knowing the rubrics, knowing kind of where we were, but not being able to participate, which is part of the Novus Ordo, right? Is to participate, not being able to do that because the language was totally different, wherein when you go to a Latin Mass anywhere in the world, the language is Latin. You know exactly where you're at. So despite the arguments to the contrary that people didn't understand Latin, and that's the reason why the Latin Mass had to be changed, it's actually more unifying.
Amen.
So I hear where you're going within this. Speaking of unification and some of the things that we are actually seeing that tends to cause scandal and cause people to question the church, ongoing historic financial scandal that has been going on in the Catholic Church kind of went to a head in the last month and a half when we saw Cardinal Becciu's defense, lawyers request again the evidence that the prosecution, i.e. the Vatican, claims that they have against their client, Cardinal Angelo Becciu. And what's insane is that, this is the third time now that they've asked for unadulterated evidence that has not been manipulated. We've spoken about this at length during our shows in the past, how the prosecution has not provided this, has said to the court that they don't think they have to provide this after they were ordered to provide this evidence. Well, last week it was reported that the prosecution somehow leaked some of the evidence before the full evidence was provided to the defense. This being videos of their interview with Monsignor Prolaskas. Now, one of the things for people to, instead of getting into the weeds, just to kind of do an overview, Monsignor Prolaskas is the main witness, the material witness, the number 3. He was the secretary to Cardinal Becciu. Okay, so he is the main witness against Cardinal Becciu on this historic financial scandal trial that has to deal with a failed London deal, property deal. So he was interviewed at length by the prosecution. He has been, quote, cleared by the court of all responsibility and charges, and yet from what one can glean through the last year of interviews is that he was the point person, he was the center, the point of contact for all of those who were involved with the financial dealings between the Vatican and this London property. So he was that guy. And then he, by his own admission, went and briefed the cardinals above him, including Cardinal Becciu. So the question really is, who's the senior guy with the authority to have, decided the go-ahead for this failed London property? Now, it doesn't take a genius to question this, because, if Monsignor Prolaskas was not the deciding factor, if he wasn't the one to say go ahead and buy the deal, and he did, as he claimed, which was brief his higher ups, where does the buck stop? I mean, Adrian, if you were just standing back and looking at this in the political sense and not in the faith sense at all, because this really doesn't have much to do with the faith. This has to do with the politics of and the state, in the Vatican state. If you were to step back and say, okay, he was not the senior person to make the final decision, who would you say would be the senior person if this has to deal with the Secretary of State? If we were looking at it in the United States, for example.
See, yeah, the case of Cardinal Becciu is really confusing to me because I'm not familiar with any of the players. And so whenever the people are brought up, I only hear about Cardinal Becciu, and all the other names kind of just wash over me because I'm not familiar with the dicastery there. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the Holy Father. At the end of the day,
There you
in
go.
America, we look at it and we say, you know, the buck stops with me, says Joe Biden, right? So when something happens in the U.S. Supreme Court, U.S. Congress, the Senate, everybody blamed Donald Trump when he was president, and the same thing should be the
Right.
case in all governments, no?
Yeah, and it's and we're again we're speaking about the Vatican City State. This has to deal with money that was a lot of the money that was gleaned from those of us who have tithed to different organizations run by the Vatican. So that's where it gets kind of messy, right? Because we have the tithe, which is done in a spiritual way, but in a material way as well, mostly for the poor, and then all of a sudden we hear investments into failed London property deals, and we're saying, wait a second, who makes those decisions? Well, this happened through the Vatican Secretary of State. So imagine if there was the Secretary of State in the United States. The head Secretary of State changed during that time, but the number 2 was at the time Cardinal Beichu. Okay, so that's where he's at. So he was number 2. He wasn't the head. So, you know, everyone else, though, above him have not been charged. It's only been Cardinal Beichu. So surprisingly, in the last week with this, or I should say in the last month, with the last hearing, and tomorrow is the hearing, the deciding hearing by the judges to make the call whether or not to throw all of this evidence out. So tomorrow I will be there. I have been there from the beginning. I want people to understand who are listening that I report from the ground. I go to these hearings. Oftentimes they're very long. Oftentimes they're spoken very quickly Italian, and I'm scrambling to you know, I'm still learning Italian, so I'm scrambling to translate. But here I am there and I think it's really important to understand that there are only a few journalists, Reuters, Italian journalists. I think Reuters is the only other American who has consistently been there at the hearings. And what is concerning to me is that there have been Catholic media, one of which has never been to any of these hearings, but there has been Catholic media. Actually, I would say, I think only CNA has been to the briefings afterwards. So that's out of all the Catholic media. I think only CNA, I'm speaking about American, only CNA has been at the briefings afterwards. So the Catholic media who were reporting and have been reporting on this scandal for over a year are not actually attending the hearings. And that's concerning, because how can you report on something if you're not actually there? And if you're not even at the briefings afterwards? But all this is to say, at the last hearing, the defense came out and said, we have evidence by in this video that this prosecution has hours and hours with this Monsignor Perlaskas. We have evidence in your own questioning that shows that you, the prosecution, went to Pope Francis and asked him questions about this particular London property before all of this investigation with Monsignor Perlaskas took place. We haven't seen any of those answers. Those also are evidence, and therefore we are calling for that evidence to be put on record. So the conversation between the prosecution and Pope Francis, meaning that Pope Francis knew about all of these deals prior to the big investigation starting. This is huge, and it's been underreported. So
I haven't even heard that.
Yeah, it's not at all.
And so, a question for you, Bree. Who judges a cardinal of the church, and especially in Rome? And then, because I would imagine, I think I could be wrong about this. I'm not very familiar with canon law, but I'm fairly certain that cardinals are only judged by the Holy Father. And
that just changed.
Okay, that just changed.
Pope Francis
very convenient.
Literally changed the law in order to ensure that Cardinal Beichu would have his day in court in lower courts. Yep.
Oh, wow.
It just
Interesting.
changed.
And then and if the Holy Father is brought into this case, there's nobody who judges the Holy Father. There's no authority
Exactly.
above him. So what
And
happens
that
there?
is exactly what the Italian press is now questioning. Is Becciu ever going to receive, or any of these other defendants going to receive a fair trial, because they're not part of the international court system? There's nothing that they could appeal to afterwards, and they're in a monarchy. So it's a big deal. On one side too, all of the people who are involved with this are Italian. So we've got Italian lawmakers who are translating Vatican civil law, which has not been touched or updated since before video and audio recordings were created back in the 1800s. And so there's a lot of antiquated things that have had to kind of be updated as they go. But there is a lot. There's a lot of eyes on this internationally as well as in the press. But I think what is necessary, and if you go to Epoch Times, I have written a few articles on this, kind of highlighting what has taken place. I will be writing an article today, hopefully will be published today by Epoch, just giving a heads up on what we're going to be expecting tomorrow. But to see that the prosecution has dropped the ball so often, and to also see certain members of the media only report on what the prosecution has wanted them to report. And because Becciu is seen to be someone who has been involved, has had his hands involved with, reportedly other types of quote unquote shady deals, people see Becciu as an easy villain, And so it goes back to this whole idea that in the Vatican, not everything is black and white. There's a lot of gray. I've said this before, and we just have to look at the evidence, and the evidence seems to suggest that Becciu is the fall guy for this. So I will continue to report on this, and hopefully more people will start asking questions, especially of the Catholic press, who have been repeating the lines pretty much of the Vatican, but of the prosecution against Cardinal Becciu now for over a year. This is unheard of. But again, because they're not actually attending any of these hearings, it's very suspect to me what their motivation is. But that's the heavy story. So a good story, actually sad story, but it's ended sort of on a good note. Adrian, did you guys have tornadoes over the weekend?
Oh, yeah, we did. Not in Houston, but in Kansas we did, and a couple other states. There was major tornadoes that went through,
yeah, and people
destroyed places.
have died.
Many.
Yeah.
I think they were estimating that it will end up being about over 100.
So through Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who is actually the Secretary of State, the Holy Father sent a telegram yesterday, and this is what it says. I'd like to read it in full for all those who are suffering right now. Pope Francis also spoke about this at the Angelus yesterday. The Holy Father was saddened to learn of the devastating impact of the tornadoes that struck the central and southern United States in these days. He offers heartfelt prayers that Almighty God will grant eternal peace to those who have died, comfort for those who have mourned their loss, and strength to all those affected by this immense tragedy. With gratitude for the tireless efforts of the rescue workers and all engaged in caring for the injured, the grieving families, and those left homeless, Pope Francis invokes upon all engaged in this massive work of relief and rebuilding the Lord's gifts of strength and generous perseverance in the service of their brothers and sisters. So he sent that yesterday. And he also sent it to the head of the USCCP. So, I find that really comforting. That's something that I think a leader should do, to acknowledge when there is, and he does this quite a bit when there is a massive tragic circumstance that happens in the world. It took a while for Joe Biden to do the same, and I think he's not yet visited any of the victims in this tornado, string of tornadoes. Have you seen anything in reporting that he's been on the ground, Adrian?
No, not at all. I haven't seen any word. If it has happened, I apologize. But from what I've seen, I have not seen anything from the White House, or from Joe Biden specifically, rather, coming out to talk about it, to visit, to do anything. But to be fair to Joe Biden, he is very old and not all there. So he may not even know what's happening. And I don't know if he can even step foot over there. He might hurt himself. So I don't know.
Oh my! I think I would hazard a guess that he will visit because he is the head of the United States, and that is what is expected by
pretty
leaders
major
to
tragedy
be on the ground. Yeah, for a major tragedy. So my prayers for those who have suffered loss, and please contact us here at GRN if you know of people who have been suffering, so we can get out on social media and pass the word, to try to support our church family. But strangely enough, right before this string of tornadoes took place, Rome had a water spout hit just very close by Rome, in Ostia. The water spout was very close to land, and we actually had pictures, Adrian, of the water spout and St. Peter's in the background. And another picture that I posted was Piazza del Popolo and the water spout. Did you see those pictures? It was fascinating. I'm told that this is a common thing. Tornadoes, water spouts, earthquakes. This is a common thing in Italy. Who would know? Yeah, who would know? But yeah, it was crazy. So I know that you've been off of social media. Did you hear that? We're just switching gears a little bit into culture and politics, but did you hear that Hillary Clinton has done a master class, and that she read the speech that she was supposed to read, or she anticipated to read, when she anticipated winning the 2016 election? Did you hear about this?
I did. I felt kind of bad for her, to be honest. I mean, Hillary Clinton is not the most moral of people, but yet listening to her speech, I really kind of felt bad for her. I was like, wow, she really had her entire being wrapped up in her idea of her being president. Like, that's all she wanted. Like that, and it's sad.
Well, it's
because
all that she wants, not past tense.
Oh, true.
Because
true.
from what we are hearing in the media, she has been reaching out to big donors again. It looks as if she may be vetting to see whether or not she has a chance to run in 2024.
Yikes. That's big cringe right there. No, that's
Are we kind
horrible.
of over that? Are we kind of over the whole Bush / his Clinton back and forth dynasty? I think, was her last chance 2016, or do you think that she may have a chance?
I don't think anybody likes Hillary Clinton anymore. Even the people, even Democrats. I think everybody's sick and tired of Hillary Clinton, to be honest. I thought it was kind of funny in a sad way, but at the same time, I'm like, she really just needs to enjoy being old and grow old, repent of her sins, her manifold sins, get right with God, and make atonement for the rest of her life, so that way she may enter the kingdom of heaven. Because right now, running for president is only going to increase her place in damnation if she continues down the path that she's on.
One of the things that I find really interesting is this ongoing. I'm not sure if you saw this, but over the week, a famous, or so-called famous, I'm not sure if he's really that famous, actor, was convicted on 5 out of 6 counts of felony lying to police, disorderly conduct. His name is Jessie Smole. Have you heard of him?
Ah, yes, that came out. That was about a year ago, no? Whenever they had him initially perpetrating this fake hate crime against himself.
Yeah, so it seems like the story was Jussie claimed that he was attacked by two MAGA hat wearing white men in the dead of winter at 2 a.m. when he went to go get a Subway sandwich, and they threw bleach on him in Chicago and said that this was MAGA country, and he ended up with a noose around his neck. Well, it ended up being not a true story. It seems that Jussie arranged this with two Nigerian men that he knew, one in which he reportedly had a relationship with, and it ended up being in court proven that he was involved with this, and so he was convicted this week. But what I find really fascinating about this, so, we spoke about this, Matt and I spoke about this past week, where politicians weigh in on developing court cases. We saw that with many different court cases throughout, the past 10, 15 years. But what I find really interesting, Adrian, as we go to break, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Joe Biden, his tweet in support of Jessie Smollett when this happened has still remained up. So has Vice President Harris. This is what Joe Biden said. What happened today to Jessie Smollett should never be tolerated in this country. We must stand up and demand that no longer give this hate safe harbor, that homophobia and racism has no place in our streets and in our hearts. We are with you, Jessie. And then Kamala Harris said, Jessie Smollett is one of the kindest, most gentle human beings I know. I'm praying for his quick recovery. This was an attempted modern-day lynching. No one should ever fear for their life because of their sexuality or color of their skin. We must confront this hate. Both of those tweets remain up despite the fact that this perpetrated and hate crime was actually done by him. What are your thoughts, Adrian, as we go to break?
Yes, we have about 50 seconds, but real quickly, the one thing I like to say is that praise be to God that this did not happen, and it proves the fact that America's not really racist at all. If people have to keep making up hate crimes against black people, against homosexuals, it doesn't happen, and so people have to make it up, and more and more, every single one of them turn out to be false over and over again. And I kind of see that as good news, that they have to make these up because there is not actual hate going on. We're going to go to break, and we'll be right back after this short break. Don't go anywhere. Bree Dail and I will be back on Intersections in just one moment.
It's often said that people can engage in whatever sexual activity they please as long as it doesn't harm anyone. But is this a sufficient moral criterion for evaluating sexual behavior? I don't think so, and here's why. First, it begs the question against the natural law moral theory, since if the natural law approach is true, then sexual acts that the natural law condemns as immoral would be harmful to a person's moral character. Second, although it's true that we should avoid inflicting unnecessary harm, it can't be our only moral criterion. For if it were, then we'd have to say a person's intent to murder or rape someone is morally permissible as long as he doesn't carry it out. But that's absurd. Avoiding unnecessary harm is a part of a good moral theory, but it's not enough. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Years ago, when I started acting, modeling, and singing in Mexico, my Catholic faith was not the center of my life. It took me many years to discover that success, fame, money, and all the pleasures of the world were not going to fulfill me. I got to a point in my life where I thought I had everything, but I realized something was missing. Thankfully, I began a faith journey that brought me back to God and the home to the Catholic Church. You can too.
Discover more at CatholicsComeHome.com.
And welcome back to an all-new Intersections Crossing Faith, Culture, and Current Events with Bree Dail. And today with my guest host, my producer, Adrian. Adrian, we were talking before about some news that hit this past week. I'm not sure. Did you hear the big breaking news out of Newsmax that the Pope is dying?
No, I didn't. I only heard about it yesterday. Someone came up to me and was like, "Did you hear that Pope Francis has a degenerative disease and is going to be dead in no time?" And I was like, I'll be honest, I did not hear that, and it sounds like it's probably not true. It could be true, but at the same time,
Well, we all are dying.
Yeah, exactly.
Philosophically. So, yeah, I just want to make this clear to those who are listening. I was the Rome correspondent for Newsmax at one point. So, one of the things that I would have hoped to have seen, that if Newsmax couldn't get their current Rome correspondent, who I don't believe has accreditation to the Holy See, if they couldn't get him to, verify if the Pope was dying or not, I would hope that Newsmax would have had the ethics to not print a story like this and then put it behind a paywall. But nevertheless, I reached out to the Holy See press office because there has been rumor for the last few years that the Pope is dying. This has happened multiple times. One instigation for that was when Pope Francis installed, I think I'm going to screw up the name of it, but it's the cardinal who is in charge of the papal household when the Pope dies. So that administrative position, and I think it begins with a C. So I see you looking it up. But it was, I believe, Cardinal Tobin that he installed, what made news because, of course, Cardinal Tobin is an American, and he also has kind of some scandals attached to him as well. So it was kind of convenient that he ended up moving over. But when that happened a few years ago, the rumor started that, maybe this is because Pope Francis is either dying or planning on, retiring. Pope Francis then came back and said, no, actually not. So that happened. And then over the summer, we know Pope Francis did have surgery. It was pretty serious surgery. And since then, because the Vatican is extremely mum on his health condition and how he's doing, rumors have been circulating that maybe he's not doing very well. But I will tell you today, Adrian, that nothing gives me belief that this story that was put out by Newsmax has any legs to it whatsoever, other than the usual deal of what we see in the Vatican, which is a lot of smoke and mirrors and rumor mongering. But I should say that I went hard and communicated with multiple sources, people who are close to Pope Francis, to confirm whether or not Newsmax's source, who they claim is a secretary of a high-ranking Vatican cardinal, was truthful at all. And other details such as what John Gizzi, who is the White House correspondent who wrote this, said that they believe the next big person in line for an early favorite is Cardinal Peter Erdo of Hungary, which there's very little supporting evidence that he would be considered papable by insiders. So, even those people who you would consider very conservative would look at that and say, yeah, it doesn't seem to be the case. So I don't know where John got this. It's definitely unsupported and unsubstantiated, but when I came out and said I couldn't confirm it, any of the assertions or allegations, what ended up happening is that other conservative outlets or more right-leaning outlets, and even some of the left-leaning outlets, quoted me, including National Review, on this. I think it's really important at this time, and I'm sure you agree, Adrian, that we keep a level head, because as I said at the beginning of the show, ethics is necessary for the reporting of information. one side might not agree, and that is the side that says truth is relative. But if we are serving the truth, if we believe that truth is not relative and he has a name and his name is Jesus and we're to serve him, then, pushing out rumors like this does nothing but undermine the reporting that we're supposed to be doing. Your thoughts?
Yes, and I looked it up. It's the Camerlengo, I believe is the pronunciation. I could be totally wrong on the pronunciation of it.
There you go. Yes, it is. Camerlengo. Thank you very much.
There you go. But no, I think you're totally right here, especially in the sense that, I mean, even let's just say hypothetically it is true, that doesn't actually mean anything because, like, Pope Benedict XVI, for instance, he said he was dying. Like, we know from his mouth, he said he was very sick and he didn't have the strength to do it, and then lived another decade. So even if he does have some kind of degenerative disease that's going to end up killing him, well, who knows how long that's going to take? Doctors are all wrong all the time about how long people have to live. So hypothetically speaking, even if it's true, it doesn't actually matter. So I think this doesn't really do any good. It only causes
and to put it behind the
anger.
paywall, that kind of thing. It does seem to be one of those clickbait situations that tends to kill credibility, both either on the left or the right. But speaking of like rumors and and reports of dying or people close to death. Great news is that Cardinal Burke is very well. He celebrated traditional Latin Mass at his shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe this past weekend. I am being told by the Institute of Christ the King that he is very well and is really on the mend. He has not completely assumed all of his pastoral duties, but he's getting very close to. So God bless Cardinal Burke. He is very focused on returning to his mission for souls. But what's interesting is that there were so many rumors and speculations on whether or not he received the vaccine, whether or not he was against vaccinations and all of this, and this was again the use of and manipulation of an emotional, very highly emotional situation, just like it would be highly emotional to say that Pope Francis is dying. In order to push a narrative, and I find that really just distasteful. But the good news is that Cardinal Burke is once more celebrating Mass in public, and any thoughts on that before we continue on? It was a beautiful feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe at Our Lady of Guadalupe Shrine.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was saying, like, just in time for Our Lady of Guadalupe, and maybe I was like, I'm not sure, but I assume he made it home to see his to the Our Lady of Guadalupe Shrine there. So praise be to God. That's awesome. I love to hear it, and we need more cardinals like Cardinal Burke, and it's very encouraging to see the rallying of people, both conservative, traditionalist, and other people of goodwill, praying for Cardinal Burke, and it really is encouraging to see, and we need more people like that. And I hope that I know he's been sidelined to the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, but it's very important shrine, and it's somewhere that we can have a spiritual center.
It's interesting. He mentions that, and this is from a CNA report. He said, "When I regained consciousness after spending 9 critical days on a ventilator, I was filled with the knowledge that Our Lady of Guadalupe had been constantly holding me in her arms and keeping me one in heart with the glorious pierced heart of her divine Son, the most sacred heart of Jesus."
Beautiful.
And then he said, later on, he said, "Clearly, if our Lord has kept me in life, he desires me to be ever more faithful and generous and pure in working with him for the salvation of souls." And I think that is it's an amazing testament to what the mission of any priest, bishop, or cardinal is, which is the salvation of souls. And, it's not just a priest, cardinal, or bishop who has that role. We all have the apostolic mission to bring Christ to the world. And I wanted to ask you, have you yet, Adrian, seen The Chosen? I know I've spoken quite a bit about it.
No, I haven't. I'm going to be honest. I watched the first episode and the opening scene just went on too long, and I turned it off. I'm gonna be honest. That's really what happened, and I just never picked it back up again. I apologize.
Oh man, well, I know it's interesting because I've been having some conversation with evangelicals on this. So today or last week, well, I guess this past month, they have been selling tickets, and they sold out for a Christmas special in theaters throughout the United States. And then I think over the weekend, they showed the episode, the Christmas special, with a whole bunch of evangelical praise and worship leaders. But what I think is really interesting, Adrian, as we close today, is that the evangelicals that I've spoken to online, I've done spaces with on Twitter. I've also, spoken in person with them. They have this deep desire for more like prayerful, historical, diverse type of sacred liturgy, sacred prayer, sacred music, and authenticism that they don't, or authenticity, I should say, that they say isn't often found after the initial being brought into the evangelical world. So there is a lot, Adrian, that we can do as Catholics to show the beauty and diversity and the sacred nature of our liturgy. So I hope everybody thinks about that as we head towards Christmas. Thank you, Adrian, today for joining me.
You're very welcome.
And God bless you all. We'll see you next Monday, right before Christmas. But until then, this is Intersections with Bree Dail and Matt Dooley.